He ruined a teenage girl's future to protect his own reputation. There is a particular cruelty in being accused of something you didn't do. Not the loud cruelty of a punch or a threat, the quiet kind. The kind that spreads through whispers in hallways and local news broadcasts until your name becomes synonymous with something you never did. Until people who once smiled at you look away. Until you start to wonder, in your worst moments, whether maybe you are what they're saying. I have watched that happen to adults, people with experience and resources and perspective, people who understand, intellectually, that accusations are not verdicts. This happened to a 16-year-old girl. Her name was Sophia. She was a straight-A student, a volunteer at her local library, and the kind of teenager who made her teachers feel good about their choice of profession. She had never been in serious trouble in her life. The man who accused her had been a school principal for 19 years. He had plaques on his wall and a reputation in the community that he had spent 2 decades carefully constructing. He walked into my courtroom expecting that reputation to protect him. He was wrong. If you believe that power should never be used to crush the innocent, subscribe, because every week I sit here and tell you the truth about what I've seen. The cases that reminded me why this work is worth doing. This one I will carry for a long time. Sophia Torres was the kind of student that schools put in brochures. She had maintained a 4.0 grade point average since 7th grade. She competed in academic decathlon. She spent Tuesday and Thursday afternoons helping elementary school students with reading at the public library 2 blocks from her house. Her teachers described her, consistently and without prompting, as respectful, curious, and kind. Her mother, Maria, was a single parent who worked as a medical billing specialist. She had raised Sophia largely on her own after her husband passed away when Sophia was 9. She was the kind of mother who attended every parent-teacher conference, every award ceremony, every school board meeting where something affected her daughter. She was attentive and present and fiercely proud. The morning everything changed, Sophia was at school early for debate practice. She had been on the debate team for 2 years and had qualified that semester for the regional competition. Practice ran from 7 to 8:30. Her coach, a young woman named Ms. Alvarez, was present the entire time, along with 7 other students. At 9 o'clock, a school janitor reported graffiti on the exterior wall near the east entrance. 3 words in red spray paint: "No justice here." By 10 o'clock, Principal Gerald Morrow had called Sophia out of second period and into his office. He told her she had been identified on the security footage. He told her the evidence was clear. He told her that actions have consequences and that she would be suspended effective immediately, pending a formal review that could result in expulsion. Sophia told him she had been at debate practice. She told him Ms. Alvarez could confirm it. She told him she had never owned a can of spray paint in her life. He told her that the decision was final. She walked to her locker, packed her things, and called her mother from the school steps. Maria described that call to me later. She said Sophia's voice was completely flat, not crying, not angry, just empty. The voice of a child who has had something taken from her and doesn't yet have the words for it. What followed was 6 weeks of the kind of slow, grinding injustice that doesn't make dramatic headlines, but destroys people quietly. The local news ran a brief story, small but visible enough. Sophia's photo appeared next to a picture of the graffiti. She was described as a student who had vandalized school property in what appeared to be an act of protest. The story mentioned her by name. Her friends grew awkward around her. One parent called Maria and suggested that Sophia might benefit from speaking to someone about her anger. A teacher told Maria privately that she didn't believe Sophia had done it, but that the principal didn't want the situation to become a bigger story before the upcoming school board review of his contract. That detail, the school board review. I noted it when Maria told me, and I noted it again when I read the case file. Maria hired a lawyer on a payment plan. She filed suit against the school district for defamation and wrongful suspension. The case was assigned to my courtroom. I reviewed the file the night before the hearing. The evidence the school had submitted was thin. A single still image from security footage, grainy, taken from a camera positioned at the far end of the hallway. The image showed a figure near the east wall. The figure was wearing a dark hoodie with the hood pulled up. You could not see the face. You could not see the hands. You could barely determine a height. The school's description of this image in the official documentation read, "Student identified as Sofia Torres, based on clothing and physical characteristics consistent with known subject." Clothing, a dark hoodie. I have been doing this for 30 years. I have reviewed evidence in thousands of cases. And I want to tell you plainly what I thought when I read that description. It was nothing. It was less than nothing. It was the written documentation of a conclusion that had been decided before any evidence was examined. I also noted that the footage submitted to the court was approximately 11 minutes long, covering the period before and after the graffiti appeared. But the timestamp had a gap. 3 minutes, from 7:42 to 7:45, were missing. I contacted the district's IT department directly through proper legal channels and requested the original unedited footage from the server. They sent it. I watched it twice before I went to sleep. Principal Morrow walked into my courtroom the way men walk in when they believe the room already belongs to them. He was dressed professionally. He carried a leather folder. He acknowledged the audience with a brief nod, the practiced acknowledgement of someone accustomed to being looked at. He took his place at the defendant's table and arranged his papers with the unhurried calm of a man who has no doubt about the outcome. Sophia and her mother sat across from him. Sophia wore a dark blue blouse. Her hair was pulled back. She kept her hands in her lap and looked at the table in front of her. She did not look at Morrow. She had, Maria told me, spent 6 weeks trying not to be visible. The habit was hard to break, even here. Maria sat beside her with a folder of her own, organized with the careful precision of a person who does not have money for mistakes. I called the session to order. "Mr. Morrow," I said, "you suspended this student based on security footage. Is that correct?" "That's correct, Your Honor." The footage clearly showed. "I'll get to the footage," I said. "First, who reviewed it?" "I did." "Personally?" "Yes." "And you determined from that footage that the figure shown was Sofia Torres, based on clothing and physical characteristics?" "Yes." "What were the physical characteristics?" He opened his folder. "Height, build, the hoodie she regularly wore." "The hoodie she regularly wore," I repeated. "How many students at your school own dark hoodies?" A brief pause. "I couldn't say exactly." "Take a guess." He shifted slightly. "A number of them, I suppose." "A number," I said. "Yes, I suppose so too." I let that sit for a moment. Then I turned to the next item. The footage submitted to this court has a gap in it. 3 minutes, from 7:42 to 7:45. Can you explain that? I was told there was a recording error. The system occasionally... Mr. Morrow, I kept my voice level. I contacted your IT department directly. They confirmed that the original file on the server does not have that gap. The gap appears only in the version submitted to this court. He looked at his folder. "Would you like to revise your answer?" He looked up. "Your Honor, I'm not sure what you're implying." "I'm not implying anything," I said. "I'm about to show you something." The clerk dimmed the lights, and the monitor came on. I played the original footage, the complete version, including the 3 minutes that had been removed from the version Morrow submitted as evidence. The hallway was empty at 7:42. The east wall was clean. At 7:43, a figure entered from the right side of the frame. Tall, dark hoodie, hood up, moved quickly and with purpose, looked over one shoulder, reached into the front pocket of the hoodie and removed a can. The figure sprayed 3 words on the wall in approximately 90 seconds, then turned to leave. And as the figure turned, the camera, positioned at an angle that Morrow had presumably not accounted for, caught the face. Not Sofia Torres. A young man, 17 or 18 years old, strong jaw, dark hair visible at the edge of the hood. I paused the frame. "Mr. Morrow," I said, "do you recognize this person?" The room was very quiet. the kind of quiet that has texture. He looked at the screen for a long moment. "That's," he started, then stopped. "That," I said, "is the student who actually painted that wall. I have his name. I have a second camera angle that confirms the identification. And I have a record showing that he is the son of your assistant principal." Someone in the audience made a sound. Not quite a gasp, something lower and more stunned. "You submitted footage with 3 minutes removed," I continued. "Those 3 minutes contained the only clear image of the actual perpetrator. And instead you suspended a 16-year-old girl based on a figure wearing a dark hoodie." Morrow's leather folder was still open in front of him. He was not looking at it anymore. "I want to ask you one more question," I said, "and I want you to think carefully before you answer it." He looked at me. "Your contract renewal with the school board was scheduled for the week after this incident. An expulsion on your record for vandalism involving a staff member's family would have been complicated for that review, wouldn't it?" It was not a question. He understood that it was not a question. His hands were flat on the table. He said nothing. "You didn't investigate this incident," I said. "You solved a problem. You picked a student with a clean record and no family connections to anyone on the board, and you made her the answer to a situation that was actually much more complicated for you." Maria, beside Sophia, had her hand pressed over her mouth. Sophia was looking at the monitor, which still showed the paused frame of the young man's face. She was looking at it the way you look at something you needed to see for a very long time and finally have. "Did you believe she did it?" I asked Morrow. He said nothing. "Mr. Morrow, did you believe Sophia Torres vandalized that wall?" A long silence. "No," he said finally. His voice was quiet, almost inaudible. The word fell into the courtroom like a stone into still water. Sophia closed her eyes. "I have been asked since whether I felt anger in that moment. The honest answer is yes. A controlled anger, the kind that does not cloud judgment but sharpens it. Because what Morrow had done was not a mistake. A mistake is a wrong identification made in good faith. A mistake is acting on incomplete information without realizing it's incomplete. What Morrow had done was look at a young girl's future and decide that his career was worth more. He had called her mother with the formal confidence of authority. He had sat across a desk from a 16-year-old who said, "I didn't do this," and told her in the language of institutional certainty that she was wrong about her own innocence. He had submitted footage to a court with 3 minutes surgically removed, and he had done all of it because the actual answer to the problem was inconvenient. I have sat on this bench for 30 years. I have seen greed. I have seen manipulation. I have seen people use power in ways that should disqualify them from ever holding it again. What I rarely see is someone use their authority over children this way, because children have less recourse. Children cannot simply retain counsel and file a motion. Children go home and lock themselves in their rooms and repeat, "I didn't do it," to the walls until it starts to feel less true. That is what Sophia had done. For 6 weeks, this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, I said. Sophia Torres is entitled to full restitution for damages, including legal fees incurred by her family, the immediate reversal of her suspension from all academic records, and a formal written retraction issued by the school district to every outlet that covered the original story. I turn to Morrow. Additionally, this matter is being referred to the District Ethics Board with a recommendation for termination. Your conduct in this case, specifically the submission of altered evidence to a court of law, constitutes a serious breach of professional and legal standards. I would strongly suggest that you consult with your own attorney before that review begins. He nodded, very small, very still. "I want to say one more thing," I said. The room waited. "You spent 19 years in a building full of young people. You spent 19 years in a position of trust, telling students that honesty matters, that integrity matters, that there are consequences for choosing the easy wrong over the hard right." I looked at him directly. "I hope, when you have time to reflect, you think about what you taught them this year. Not in your classes, in this case." He did not respond. There was nothing left to say. Sophia and her mother sat together for a few minutes after the room cleared. "I did not approach them. That is not my role. But I watched from across the room as Maria held her daughter, and Sophia, for the first time in 6 weeks, seemed to let herself be held without holding anything back. She cried, a different kind of crying than the kind Maria had described hearing through a closed door. Not the tight, contained crying of someone trying not to break. The open kind. The kind that means it is finally over. Ms. Alvarez, the debate coach, had come to the courthouse that morning. She had not been called to testify. She had simply come. She waited near the back until the room cleared, and then she walked over to Sophia and said something quietly that I couldn't hear. Sophia laughed, small and surprised and real. That laugh was worth 30 years on this bench. The story circulated widely in the days that followed. What people focused on more than the ruling was a single moment from the hearing. The moment Morrow said no when I asked him whether he had believed Sophia was guilty. People replayed that moment. They shared it with captions about accountability and children and the abuse of authority. Teachers commented in large numbers, writing about the systems that sometimes protect adults at the expense of students. Parents wrote about their own children and the times they had fought on their behalf, and the times they had not known they needed to fight. One comment from a woman who said she was a former student of Morrow's school simply said, "I was suspended by him in 2019 for something I didn't do. I always knew." Sophia returned to school the following month. Her academic record was cleared. The regional debate competition had passed while she was suspended, but her coach had already begun working with the organizers about an exception for the following semester, given the circumstances. She went back to the library on Tuesdays and Thursdays. She told a reporter, briefly and without drama, "I just want things to go back to normal, not for me, for my mom. She worked so hard." That is a 16-year-old who understands something that many adults never learn. I want to leave you with something that has stayed with me since that morning. Sophia sat in my courtroom for several hours. She was quiet and still and composed in the way that people are composed when they have run out of the energy that composure usually costs. She had been composed for 6 weeks. It had taken everything she had. And when the ruling came, when the formal language of the law confirmed what she had known all along, the composure broke, not from weakness, from relief. There is a difference. I think about all the young people who sit in offices across this country and say, "I didn't do this," to adults who have already decided the answer, who go home and carry the weight of being disbelieved, who learn too early that authority and truth are not always the same thing. Most of them do not end up in a courtroom where someone looks at the full evidence. Most of them just carry it. I cannot fix that. No single verdict can fix that. But I can tell you this: when a person in authority uses their position to protect themselves at someone else's expense, especially a child's expense, they are not just breaking a rule, they are breaking something larger. They are teaching everyone watching that power matters more than truth. And when that is allowed to stand without consequence, it does not stay contained to one hallway or one school or one case. It spreads. The only answer to it is the same thing it always has been: someone willing to look at the full evidence, someone willing to ask the question that the powerful are counting on nobody asking, someone willing to press play on the missing 3 minutes. I have been that person for 30 years. I will keep being that person for as long as I can. If this story stayed with you, share it, because the young people who are sitting in rooms right now saying, "I didn't do this," deserve to know that someone is still paying attention.